Eagles talk, A to D, Rob Brinkman, PY. Commanders upset the Eagles. Jalen Hurts injured. Saquon Barkley potentially back on track for the NFL single-season rushing record. Let's talk about everything. Let's go, fam.
If you love the Eagles, let me get a hell yeah! You love the Philadelphia Eagles, let me get a hell yeah! Philadelphia!
All right, everybody, welcome in. This is Eagles Talk live on A2D Radio, exclusively from the Real Talk Studios. PY's in the house. Rob Brinkman, is in the house. Les Bowen will be along for his regular spot here, Bowen on the Birds. Before we get going here, it is Christmas week. It's also Dallas week. I'd like to wish each and every one of our listeners, everyone part of the A2D family, we couldn't do it without you. We do it for you. So happy holidays, Merry Christmas. Everyone be safe out there. Each and every week, we are brought to you by Baggio's Breads. Baggio's Breads, located in Mount Laurel, New Jersey. Home of the best stuffed breads, tomato pie, sandwiches, cutlets, and meatballs. Mention A2D Radio for 10% off your in-store purchase. If you haven't already, hit that like, hit that subscribe, turn those notifications on. We can be found on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter X, Instagram. Download us wherever you get your podcasts, Spreaker, Spotify, Google Play, iHeartRadio, iTunes. Before we get into the poll question, PY, initial thoughts on the football game yesterday?
Cheeks.
It was very cheeks.
The defense was awful. AJ and Devontae, they had their moments. Kenny Pickett was
No.
I don't ever want to hear anyone try and compare Jalen to any of these backups ever again, because we saw it. We saw the disparity. It's like it's a puddle compared to the Atlantic Ocean. Essentially, that's how far apart we are.
I'm not even a Jalen guy, some would say, and I like Kenny Pickett. He's just not going to get it. I hate that he wears two gloves. That's so feminine and so not what I want from my leader.
It has nothing to do with femininity.
It has everything. It has everything to do with it, PY. It has everything to do with it, PY. Like, don't put a glove on your freaking throwing hand. Like, be a man. Throw the football. But I digress. Let's dive into our poll question. Keep your comments flowing in. We'll get to as many throughout the show as we can. They're already flying in. Obviously, the elephant in the room is Jalen Hurts did not finish the football game yesterday, was removed by the officials, did not pass concussion protocol, was forced to sit out pretty much the entire game. Definitely the whole second half.
Baker Mayfield gets knocked into like 3 years ago. That's how bad he got hurt. And they let him come back. Meanwhile, Jalen is barely hit as bad, and they make him sit out.
Well, I probably shouldn't say this because Baker Mayfield looks one type of way and Jalen Hurts looks another type of way. So there's special rules for, and you see it all over the league. Like, roughing the passer doesn't get called on Jalen Hurts nearly enough. Which
should have got called on Kenny.
Which, by the way, it would have been a soft penalty.
That's the definition of roughing the passer. Gives himself up, slides, is already on the ground, and has given himself up. And there's no flag.
I completely agree. No flag, and he's got to sit out. But our poll question tonight, the loss of the Commanders was about the absence of Jalen Hurts than it was about the defense's performance. Look, you didn't lose that game. I firmly disagree with this poll, because you didn't lose that game because Jalen Hurts missed the game. They scored 33 points in the game. Now, we can talk about their only real significant yardage in the second half was on Lattimore's pass interference penalties against A.J. Brown. But 33 points still went up on the board in the football game against the Commanders. The defense was absolutely atrocious yesterday. atrocious. Now, I'm not overly concerned about it. I consider it a blip on the radar. They just didn't play well. Quinyon Mitchell, he got taken to school a little bit yesterday for the first time in his NFL career by a good receiver.
Had to happen eventually.
It happened a couple weeks ago with Cooper DeJean with Adam Thielen. Cooper DeJean learned, got better. He's been playing well ever since. Yep. I fully expect the same thing from Quinyon Mitchell. Everything got worse when Josh Sweat got hurt.
Yep.
And number two, CJ Gardner-Johnson was ejected from the football game for perhaps the softest ejection in NFL professional sports history. So, if you're playing professional sports, PY, and you don't throw a punch, you absolutely 1,000% should not be removed, disqualified.
No, I agree.
Totally nonsense.
So I'm not saying that it wasn't weak. They shouldn't have disqualified him. But, like, here's the thing. Like, after the first one, and I understand CJGJ is a passionate guy. He's a hothead. As a hothead myself, we don't always step with the right foot, if that makes sense. We don't always think level-headed. We think with our emotions, which I'll never blame anyone for that because I can't say I don't do it. But when you've already put yourself in a position to where your temper has gotten the best of you, you had that 15-yarder, you have to be smarter. He shouldn't have been ejected. That was BS. But you have to know that the way the refs are playing it and the way the refs are looking at it, especially in the first half, when they had 80 yards of penalties on them and the you know what I mean? You have to think about what could happen by mouthing off. And obviously, sometimes your mouth can write checks your touch can't bounce. Like, sometimes it gets you in trouble when you don't mean it to. And I'm not putting too much on CJ and saying, oh, you got to be a better leader and whatnot, blah, blah, blah. Like, he's a good leader. He's a good player. But you just have to know where you're at in the game. You have to know the situations. And I think he went with the wrong foot yesterday. And I think he put his foot in his mouth, and it cost this team. It's not going to cost us in the long run, but it did cost us.
And I guarantee you, PY, CJ Gardner-Johnson had no idea he was going to get ejected. He had no idea that of the two personal fouling you're ejected. I guarantee he had no clue until their big.
Then that's a problem. Then that's a problem.
That's a problem that nobody told him in charge.
You should know this. I'm sorry. There's no way you're playing in the modern day NFL, and you, as a defensive player, and you don't know two unsportsmanlike conduct penalties get you kicked out of the game. If that's the case, he needs to be sitting down with a rule book after that game and see what else he doesn't know.
CJ Gardner-Johnson and studying books doesn't seem like they're synonymous with each other. And I love the guy.
Fancy on offense? I don't think so. I disagree vehemently. There's nothing but books they're looking up. If there were any other defensive coordinator, I would agree with you. Less is more. The Fangio system?
Well, and then it's compounded because you're already thin at edge rush, and then Josh Sweat gets hurt. Alex Hunton's in there, and he really only knows how to do one thing still at this point in his career, and that's bull rush. And that's bull rush and try and get a sack, which is absolutely not what you can do against an athlete like Jaden Daniels because he lost contain constantly, time after time after time, and Jalen Daniels, just piled up. The rush.
But I can't even get too mad at him. This kid is so raw. Like, he's shown you more this season than you ever expected him to do with what you were expected to get this season. I think the bigger issue was the Tristan McCollum. Because CJGJ let his emotions get the best of him, we were stuck with Tristan McCollum at safety, who's been okay. I still want them to unleash Sidney Brown, which I get they're not because of the knee and, because of the concussion stuff and whatnot, which is fine. But, when you have someone like Tristan McCollum in there who's just – he's not trustworthy. You can't believe in him. And the problem is you can't trust anyone else because who you throwing out there? Avante?
It was just not. And like I said, like I'm not gonna sit. I'm not freaking out tonight. I'm
No,
not.
well, there's
Still
no reason to.
Very good defense. They're contenders for the Lombardi Trophy, but that defense is the reason they lost the game yesterday. It blows my mind, PY, that they've caused 4 turnovers.
Yep.
4 turnovers and still allowed the Washington Commanders to hang 36 points on them. That's unacceptable.
So
absolutely 100% unacceptable. That's the reason they lost the game. So I guess I disagree to the poll.
So I agree to the poll. Like, obviously, at the end of the day, defense lost you that game. Obviously, 33 points is a lot put up. But I think this team goes as far as Jalen Hurts to go. When he's there and they're moving and they're grooving and the offense is doing what it has to do, because you know eventually it's going to happen. Like, they take on the team as a whole, the identity of their quarterback. Let's not worry about it. We're grooving. We're going to do what we got to do. You got me. I got you. This is how we're going to run. And in that second half, usually how it works is Jalen gets into his groove. They start hitting their strides, and the defense is like, okay, they got us. We're going to take care of it. We're going to hold shit down like we usually do. And then Saquon starts to go off. And because you didn't have Jalen in there, and because Saquon didn't feel as comfortable with Pickett, not to mention the fact that nobody is expecting Kenny Pickett to run. So they're just like, screw it. We're just going to load 8 in the box, and we're just going to do what we got to do. Like, the first half Saquon versus the second half Saquon was a completely different monster. Like, there are people who will look at this and be like, oh, you know, Jalen doesn't really impact the run game that often, which I think they're ridiculous, and they're just looking for ways to harass Jalen Hurts. But, like, this kind of shows you that even when he's not putting up monster numbers in the passing game, this shows you even when the run pass option isn't working, the threat of him running, the threat of him. My favorite plays they do is it's 4th down. He runs to the right, and then he hits Dallas Goedert, who he hits whoever for a 4-yard burst on the right or left side, because there's the threat of him running, whether it's Saquon Barkley, whether it's Jalen Hurts. Like, that threat is there, and teams have to prepare for it. Like, without him and just Kenny Pickett, you know what's happening. They're just running it with Saquon. Like that.
If Kenny Pickett does have to play next week against Dallas, like, you can't call the game like Jalen Hurts is in there. Like, I knew they were going to. In the back of my mind, I knew they were going to lose the game yesterday because Pam Oliver came out and they asked Nick Sirianni at halftime, what changes with Kenny Pickett in there instead of Jalen Hurts? Nick Sirianni's response was nothing. We're going to keep our poise and do what we do. You can't do that. You can't call. Now, I get it's different because you got to go on the fly. And that's not the easiest thing to do. But you can't. You're facing a totally different defensive look with Kenny Pickett in there.
Yep.
You're going to be facing a lot more zone coverage. I would assume with Kenny Pickett in there because you don't have to spy Jalen and you can just load the box and have guys in coverage. So, like, it's a totally different offense. Kellen Moore and Nick Sirianni have to cultivate if Kenny Pickett does have to play next week against Dallas.
Yeah, that's fast.
It's some comments before we bring in Les. Little Griffin, check us out on YouTube. I'm a big fan of Eagles 2024 season. Eagles better beat Cowboys. Jalen Hurts better get Eagles 28. Eagles 28, Cowboys 13.
Who cares if they lose? It doesn't matter.
Well, is the NFC East clinched?
They need one game. Like, and even let's say the Commanders win the next 2. No, but this is different though. This is different. If we lose 2 and they win 2, nothing changes.
We just beat the Cowboys and clinch it, and then worry about if we're going to get Saquon Barkley 2,000 yards or his record against the Giants. Why don't we just make it easy?
I'm fine with that.
To say it doesn't matter, that's wow. I don't agree with that at all. You got to regain some momentum after that loss yesterday.
So
Dynasty's in the house. Blackwell's in the house. Yeah, but you're just looking at the standings and win losses like, oh, nothing changes. No, you need to recapture some momentum before entering the playoffs. You do.
I know.
Carlos Rosado. Let's be real, Eagles beat the Eagles yesterday, plain and simple. And Chris Kaufman is right. I disregarded the Reed Blankenship interception at the end,
indeed.
which one would assume would have clinched the football game.
Yep.
But Devontae Smith dropped that pass, and they had to settle for 3, and the rest is history. So, yes, 5 turnovers they cost. Thank you, Chris. Clinch and use the last game as a bye. Certainly an option. All right, let's bring in our good friend, special holiday edition, Bowen on the Birds. What's going on, Les? How we doing?
Ho, 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 fellas. How are you?
Les, did you get tired of roasting people? Because your Twitter's been zinging left and right the last 24 hours.
Yeah, I need to stay off of that for a while. But Greg Olsen yesterday was that was quite a performance. So I think really it wasn't as much him as it was Joe Davis. But
my God, I can't believe the Eagles are losing without their all-pro caliber quarterback. I don't know what's going on here.
Right. Yeah, I think what Rob said a minute ago, from the time Hurts went out, you thought, okay, this is going to be really hard because Jaden Daniels versus Kenny Pickett is a real mismatch. And they just didn't – they seemed thrilled, first of all, with the idea of the Commanders coming back. My thing is you're doing this for 2 markets, right? You're basically broadcasting this for the Washington market and the Philadelphia market, and you kind of you got to put yourself in the shoes of both fan bases, I would think, and give some indication of, boy, this must be really frustrating for Eagles fans watching this, or Eagles fans must really think this game was going to go another way, and the injuries just have taken them into a totally different place. Instead it was just wow, isn't this stupendous? Isn't this magnificent? It was very strange and very. They kept showing. I think they felt they absolved themselves by showing the Hurts hit over and over again, without really giving it any context, without saying, and of course, Kenny Pickett hasn't really played all year, and they're only running a tiny bit of their offense with him. And, he didn't even have the week of practice. They're not running plays for him. They're running the plays they thought they were going to run with Jalen. They just didn't seem very interested in the Eagles side of the equation at all, frankly. Other than the turnovers. They were mesmerized by the turnovers, which a lot of people are seizing on the 33 points now. Oh, the Eagles scored 33 points. What are you talking about, that there was a problem with Kenny Pickett? The last 4 turnovers got them 6 points. They kicked some field goals because they got a bunch of turnovers. Kenny Pickett didn't move the ball hardly at all in the second half. You would think a backup quarterback who hadn't played all year would come in really rusty and unsure, and then get better as the game went on. It was kind of the opposite, actually. His first few series were excellent, and then he just, in the second half, he couldn't do much of anything. It was a frustrating game to watch, and I think for Eagles fans, the announcing crew was put salt in the wound.
All right, so Les, our poll question tonight was the loss to the Commanders was about the absence of Jalen Hurts. Then it was about the defensive performance. Now, I am firmly in the camp of you put 33 up, you got to find a way to. You put up 33 on the board, you force 5 turnovers, and you lose the game somehow. So I'm in the defense lost the game yesterday.
I'm going to mildly disagree with you. I think that, as PY said, the two are connected. The defense is used to Jalen controlling the ball, not having a lot of 3 and outs. against Jaden Daniels, that's not the kind of game they played yesterday wasn't the kind of game they needed to play for the defense. Daniels is really, really, really good. And you keep giving him the ball back and not scoring touchdowns and kicking field goals instead. I just don't think that works. And I think that was a bigger problem. They were both problems. I don't think there's any way to say one was a problem and one wasn't. They were both problems. But of the two of them, I think the loss was about losing Jalen Hurts more than anything else, really. And I think if they'd had Jalen Hurts, they would have scored 50 points. You can't imagine a universe in which the Commanders turn the ball over 5 times and the Eagles have Jalen Hurts and somehow they lose that game. No, that would not happen. I think it was more about the absence of Hurts, but certainly the defense did not bail anybody out, didn't pick anybody up. I was really, even after the Smitty drop there, that's what I was thinking might happen. Then they had another terrible kickoff situation and gave up really bad field position right off the bat, and just the Commanders went right down the field and scored. And it was a bad defensive performance, but the loss was about Jalen Hurts.
Yep.
Yeah. Speaking of kicking, did you see the opening kickoff? Just a straight shank. Didn't even make the landing zone.
What is this all about? It's not just the temperature yesterday. These were like 15 yards short of where you needed them to be, and they weren't like squib kicks or mortar kicks or anything like that. They were terrible. Of course, nobody really talked to Braden Mann. There was plenty else to cover yesterday in the locker room without trying to find Braden Mann and ask him what the hell that was about. And of course, Sirianni never tells anybody anything about anything. He had no insight into it whatsoever. But I'd love to know, and Michael Clay will talk tomorrow, and I guess people will get to ask him what the hell was going on with that. But it can't go on like that. People were down on Jake Elliott in the long field goals a few weeks ago. You can't have Braden Mann kicking off if he can't kick off in the cold, because they're not going to play indoors again until maybe they get to the NFC Championship game in Detroit, if they make it that far. So, somebody's going to have to kick off in the cold.
Saquon Barkley. I'm going to take half credit for my predictions. I predicted a big Eagles win last week, and I predicted that Saquon Barkley would get back on track as he tries to get.
That would have happened. Record. They were up 14-0 when Pickett threw that ridiculous interception.
Yep.
And even after that, Saquon got the long touchdown run, but then it was like something clicked in for Washington. They were like, hey, Kenny Pickett's quarterbacking the other team. Let's put everybody in the box and see if Kenny Pickett can beat us. And that worked very well for them. But Saquon was fine. I was really puzzled with Kellen Moore. And I'm not an X and O guy, as I've said on here before. So you're trying to run the ball into this stacked box. Saquon is getting hit as he takes the ball from the quarterback. You got Grant Calcaterra trying to block there. Why not put like Tyler Steen in as the tight end if you want to run with Saquon against a stacked box?
Yeah, just put an extra lineman in.
You signed that fullback. He played one snap, Blasson game. Line him up there. Put an extra offensive lineman in, and then see if the stack box is as effective.
Yeah.
But just trying to run it like pretend like those guys aren't there, that didn't work well. And I'd love to hear Kellen Moore's explanation for doing that, but his explanations usually aren't very insightful.
I would have been fine with having running 6 linemen every play for the rest of the game. I'm 100% with that. Like, you're only playing Devontae and AJ anyway. Like, the third wide receiver or the second tight end on the field doesn't really matter. I don't give a crap. Like, literally just pull Tyler Steen every play like it's Jay Ajayi in 2017.
Right.
That one pull play where he goes 80 yards. Like, I don't care. Like, let's just do that all game long. And I don't think he's going to get the -4 or the -2s he was getting.
Right. And, I like Grant Calcaterra. He's a great story coming back from the concussions, having given up football and all that stuff. I'm really glad they have him. He's a good receiver, but they didn't throw to him at all yesterday. And he's a terrible blocker. He's not there to block. And they kept trying to use him to block. He had a miserable.
Plus, he couldn't block you on Twitter.
Yeah, it was, he gave up a sack. It was just a horrible, why is he out there if you can't throw him the ball? Why not play someone else? Play 47, the other tight end who was on for Barkley's long touchdown run and threw a key block on that. Play somebody, do something different, But like you said, why is Jahan Dotson out there? Why is Johnny Wilson out there? Pickett couldn't find anybody who wasn't Devontae or AJ. So,
Well, they're fine with more Johnny because Johnny can at least block well.
Yeah. I think Johnny only played like 4 snaps or something.
Yeah.
I don't know. There was a lot that I didn't understand about what the Eagles were trying to do.
Now,
they had Pickett trying to throw deep right away, like, hey, you're in the game. Let's see if you can throw it 45 yards.
Yeah, Les, the problem with the offense yesterday was they didn't care that Kenny Pickett went in the game and Jalen Hurts came out.
Yeah.
They wanted to play the same way because, we do what we do and we're going to play with poise and we're going to win. Well, anyone with a brain knows that, Kenny Pickett is not Jalen Hurts. And then their adaptation in the second half was to do what you pointed out and PY pointed out was to just run Saquon into the ground against.
They really thought. I think they came out of the half thinking they could just run him 20 times in the second half and somehow it would all work out, regardless of what Washington did. And that's ridiculous. I mean, you saw what happened. It was awful.
Well, I'm really scared. First off, I hope Jalen Hurts is clear because this Dallas game does matter because you have to get a win.
As bad as the Giants are, you don't go into the last game of the season needing to win it, to get the seed
get a home game
that you need. Yeah. PY, you said nothing changes, but if they lose the NFC East to Washington, something changes, right? I mean,
this division's not clinched, so I don't understand how nothing changes.
Yeah. You don't need to go play anything can happen in one game, win this game this week. And with Hurts, the whole concussion thing is kind of Byzantine. It's frustrating, but it's really necessary. Obviously, I think everybody understands. You have to be very, very careful with concussions, but it's weird. Something happened with Jalen in the first Commanders game. I don't know if you guys remember, and he came out after the game and said he beat the protocol, which wasn't really a great thing to say. Do you guys remember that?
Yeah, he's not very media savvy.
The implication was that maybe he had a concussion, but he made his way through the questions that they asked him or whatever, without being detected. And he was wearing dark glasses, as I recall at the time, which is not what you want. So yesterday, it's really funny. He got up and he gave the thumbs up. It's not funny. I mean, funny is strange. He gave the thumbs up to the referee, but he happened to be, when he popped up, he's like right face to face with the referee. And I really think had he turned the other way, he might have stayed in the game, which would have been a bad thing, in the long run. But it was it might have changed the outcome of the game somehow. I don't know. But now that he's in this protocol, it's a multi-pronged thing. You have to do one thing, and then there's a certain amount of time that has to pass before you do the second thing. And it's not just a matter of showing up one day and, making some cognitive tests, acing them, and you're okay. You have to do all this different stuff, and it's unlikely he's going to practice, this week. Does that matter? It wouldn't matter to me after seeing Kenny Pickett. I'd take Jalen with no practice, but it's going to be an interesting week. We're not going to know anything. Sirianni isn't going to tell us anything. Pickett, we have Pickett with these ribs. Sirianni wouldn't talk about that today, so it could be Tanner McKee Sunday for all we know.
Oh joy!
Yeah,
because Jalen said that thing about his hand. I think it was this week with his left hand. Said it was sore and it kind of injured, so he's not really trying to carry the ball in it. Like, why would you say that to the media and to your opponents out there? Like, he's not very media savvy. He's just really not. I hope he can play. I hope the Eagles can get a
win versus Dallas. Can play.
Yeah. If he doesn't, they will. Despite what Nick said yesterday, if they have a week with Kenny Pickett, I know they're smart enough to try to figure out what they need to do with Kenny Pickett to get through the game rather than just trying to do whatever they do with Jalen. That's not.
I hope you're right about the intelligence of our coaching staff, Les.
We'll see.
I'm not as optimistic as you. Yeah. All right, some more comments rolling in. Pete Evans, evening, gents. I agree with the poll. Kicking distance was at a premium. The rumor is the cold air, and it was dense with the wind being inconsistent.
Yeah, but Washington's kickoffs weren't nearly as bad.
And it's not going to. The wind's super inconsistent at the Link. I mean, Les, I know you've been at the Link for a lot of times. You got these. It's an inexplicably stupid stadium where you have these just openings.
Yeah, you have a big opening on that north side, which there's always wind coming through there, and you're right. You're kind of near the river. And there's a lot of open space down there, and it's always windy down there. It really is. So, yeah. But I don't know
Wing, Mr. Wings, and there was no adjustments. Adjustments are key in playoffs, and we have Moore and Sirianni, who seem incapable of adjusting. Frustrating. Well, they didn't adjust. They didn't adjust to their quarterback being out yesterday.
Hold on, time of the play. Offsides, clip in, Yahtzee. Like, what are we talking about?
Defend your boy, Nick.
I don't know that they haven't ever adjusted anything.
I think that's a bad thing because they've been the second half team. So clearly they've made their adjustments. Like, if we want to pile on Sirianni and more, that's fine. But to say they're not a team that makes adjustments is asinine. Like, they've been making adjustments in the second half all year.
Yeah, they have, or at least they've been settling in. And the way I see it, PY, is a little less saccharine than you. I think they often come into games with the wrong idea about what they're going to be able to do with the opponent, and they kind of have to fumble around and figure out, what's going to work against the opponent. And they finally settle upon that and do well. Yesterday was the opposite of the one game all year. We haven't really talked about that. First game all year, they score a touchdown on the opening drive, and what happens after that? It was almost like it was cursed. You couldn't possibly get off to a good start with touchdowns on your first two drives and have that work out. It was crazy. It was a very strange game.
Pete Evans also said it needs to be said there's a real possibility they lose to Dallas. They are a different team than they were the first time around. Dallas is interesting because Dallas with the Commanders' win yesterday, that eliminated the Niners and the Cowboys from playoff contention. And Dallas went out on Sunday Night Football and stuck it to Tampa Bay. Now, I'm not comparing Tampa Bay to the Philadelphia Eagles. The Eagles are a better team, even though Tampa beat the Eagles way back when. But I mean, they're going to play.
Yeah,
they're not going to fold up. They're playing for Zimmer. They're playing for McCarthy.
Well, I want to get your opinion on this. So I watch a lot of the Dallas media. I have a online subscription to the Dallas Morning News, and you would have thought they had, defended the Alamo last night or something. They played a good game after being eliminated. And people were like teary-eyed about this, about what a wonderful culture they have and what tough guys they are. And I'm looking at this
loser
like
talk less.
In Philly, people would be laughing at them. Like you finally showed up when it was too late. Yeah, that was kind of my take, but they did play well.
That would be my take as well, Les.
But
like, why? Where was this all season? Where was this heart all season?
You can't.
There is no heart.
Steamrolled.
There's no moral victories. Winning games late in the season after you've been eliminated. We went through that. I don't know if you guys remember 2011. The Eagles were 4-8, and Andy Reid was on his way out that year, and they won their last 4 games, which meant absolutely zip to anybody. But it was enough for Jeffrey Lurie to hang on to Andy for another year because of the way the team responded to him, and you see the same things being said about Mike McCarthy, and Eagles fans have to hope that that's how it turns out in Dallas as well, because it's just a bunch of crap, really. I mean, they're not proving anything to anybody after having been eliminated, after losing their first 5 home games by lopsided scores. They're not, no. What I see, Rob and Pete, is their defense has gotten a lot of guys back and is playing really well, I think. Their offense is still Cooper Rush and CeeDee Lamb. CeeDee Lamb obviously is a great player, but I'll be shocked if they come in and play a wonderful game. I mean, the Eagles are going to have to beat themselves again, I would think, but I could be wrong, but
if Jalen's playing, I think you're right, Les. But if Kenny Pickett, I don't know what to – I don't know what to. If Kenny Pickett has to play, I don't know what I'm getting from a coaching standpoint with the game plan. I don't know what Kenny Pickett is actually going to do.
Yeah.
Yeah. But you at least have a week to prepare him and set up the offense to adjust to his strengths and weaknesses.
Yeah, just that will help a little. That will help a little.
And I'm not worried about Cooper Rush.
That works both ways. That logic works both ways, though, PY, because if Dallas knows that Kenny Pickett's coming in, they're going to play a lot different, too. And they're going to be breathing a sigh, wow, we can just pin our ears back and go ahead. Micah Parsons going to be licking his chops if Kenny Pickett's in the football game.
But the thing about Cooper Rush, PY, is, you're not afraid of Cooper Rush, but they've had the benefit there. It's been like more than a month of him quarterbacking the Cowboys. And he's not good, but he's settled into the role. It's not like he just came off the bench having not played all year like Kenny Pickett did Sunday. He's been the quarterback for a while. They know what they can do with him and what they can't do. He doesn't have a terrible arm, but obviously he's not as good as Dak Prescott, and he's certainly not as good as Jalen Hurts, but he's probably as good as Kenny Pickett. and he certainly played a lot more snaps this year than Kenny Pickett has. So, that would be a real problem for the Eagles if Jalen doesn't get okayed.
No amount of preparation creates viable NFL arm strength. Kenny Pickett starting may be a loss.
Yeah.
It was like, why do I think, guys, if Kenny Pickett is starting, it's going to be the second half running Saquon into a wall.
Yeah, it might be.
That's what I see the game.
It might be. And people were like, I was very critical of Pickett on social media, and people were like, oh, there were these drops. Well, the only real drop was the Devontae Smith one. The Barkley one was an underthrown ball, that he had to come back for it. To me, those aren't drops. A real quarterback hits the receiver in stride. And the only time he did that was Devontae. I think maybe Devontae was so shocked that's why he dropped the ball. But Pickett does not have a good arm. He doesn't have good pocket presence. He seems to be a competitor. He converted a 4th down. I don't think he's going to get. He played with the ribs. I don't think he's going to get too flustered. But I just don't think he's talented.
Defense, I mean, obviously the defense, whether you agree or disagree to our poll question, the defense was not good yesterday.
No, it was not.
Nope.
You
was
have
great against the run, except for when Jaden Daniels took off for 30 yards.
Yeah, well, when you got Tristan McCollum on him.
Yeah, and McCollum not only didn't make the tackle there, but he took Zach Bond out of the play.
Yes, he did.
Oh, dear.
Well, anyway, my concern with the defense is Josh Sweat. Now, I have not seen any news about the severity of Josh Sweat's injury, but you already have Huff out, which I believe they've opened their –
Sweat came back in and played, but he didn't come back in and play well. Sweat was back in that mode yesterday, injury notwithstanding. That mode he gets in where he's always upfield. He's like behind the quarterback somewhere. You know.
That's exactly why we talked about it before he went home. When Jalen Hurts had to play, all he knows how to do is bull rush and try and get a sack. But the problem with that is Josh Sweat and Jalen Hurts, you make it so easy for Jaden Daniels to get loose. You break contain. Yeah. Nobody sets the edge. That's why Jaden Daniels had 80-some-odd yards rushing and kept drives alive on third downs where, you know, a more disciplined defensive front on the edge may have been able to get off the field.
Yes.
And C.J. Gardner-Johnson getting ejected obviously didn't help any. Huge, as we pointed out, Tristan McCollum was not up to snuff.
Does anybody think that by this point, Sidney Brown's been back for several weeks now? I know it was a long recovery and all that stuff, and I know maybe Fangio doesn't know him all that well yet or something, but wasn't Sidney Brown drafted to play safety? You know, why is McCollum? McCollum's, you know, nice story, glad he's in the league and his brother and all that, but he's
not good.
You know, I mean, no.
Yeah, I mean,
Sidney Brown is a guy they drafted to play.
I thought Sidney Brown would be playing a large variety of snaps at this point. Like, I understand Fangio has his guys, and everyone does, just like Schwartz did. But, like, let's nip this in the bud. Sidney Brown is a player. Sidney Brown is a good player. Like, let him go. Like, let him play. Like, you know how you're going to know if he sucks or not? By letting him go out there. I do know this. Vontae Maddox, you can't throw him out there. And Tristan McCollum just can't get it done.
Do they have Gardner-Johnson under contract for next season?
Yes.
Okay. Because last time he was here, he was only here 1 year.
Right.
I was thinking this might be the same kind of deal. But
it's a 3-year deal, but it could just be next year.
Yeah. But, you know, I would like to see what Sidney Brown can do, and I don't need to see any more of what Tristan McCollum can do.
No, thank you. I'm good. One is enough.
Separate point, a wardrobe point. We should never wear that uniform combination ever again. Absolutely horrendous.
It's kind of unattractive.
White shirt, black pants, green helmet. Awful. Makes no sense. It's like when you get dressed in the dark and you think you're putting on black sweatpants, but you put on blue sweatpants, and because they kind of look the same if you don't have the light on, and you just look like a jackass the whole rest of the day. That's what that was.
Yeah, it didn't do much for me. This is an area where the Eagles have really had their problems over the years. It took them forever to get back to Kelly Green for a game here and there. You remember when they had the color rush thing several years ago? Teams came up with color rush uniforms.
Yeah.
The Eagles was all white. I'm sure they sold a lot of those jerseys, white jerseys with green lettering. That was really different. They could have. You had to use one of your colors, right? Well, the Eagles have silver as one of their colors. They could have had silver jerseys with green numbers, and I don't know how it would have looked, but people would have certainly bought that. You know, they just don't have a good knack for that kind of thing. I think they're really behind the curve on stuff like that. They're not exactly Oregon when it comes to picking out stuff.
I guess my beef is the pants. The black pants just stuck out like a sword thumb. It was no good.
Agreed.
It's okay. This is not the creamsicles.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
All right, Les, before we let you go, your level of concern over yesterday, Like, do you think that this defense gets back on track against Dallas? Do you think – obviously, we have no concerns about the offense if Jalen Hurts is active.
Yeah, my only concern is the quarterbacking, guys. I don't think anything fatal happened to the defense. I think it was just a sloppy game. They were off their stride because of what happened with Hurts and the fact that they weren't getting the kind of, rest between series that they normally get. And some of the officiating things kind of threw them a little. The CJ ejection, the Milton Williams penalty, and the Jalen Carter penalty. I think they struggle, but I don't think that's anything they can't overcome. The problem is the quarterbacking. That's what concerns me, not going into the playoffs, but for this week against Dallas. They really need to have Jalen Hurts out there if he can get through the protocol. And even if he doesn't practice, I think, open arms. I do not want to see Kenny Pickett this weekend at all. And I don't want to see Tanner McKee either. So, yeah, that would be my concern.
I mean, you think they would, like, even if he doesn't practice and he clears it, say, and by the way, fans out there, if you have tickets to this game, the game is now at 1 o'clock.
1 o'clock,
as opposed to 4 o'clock. So, like, Jalen Hurts if he's cleared protocol, even if he doesn't practice, like, he's in there, right? They're not going to.
Yep.
Well, Sirianni, of course, wouldn't confirm that today because he never confirms anything, but I would think so. I mean, you're at a point in the season now where he's played every week. It's not like he's going to be he's going to be in meetings and things like that. He's going to know what the game plan is. I just don't think that can be a big factor in keeping it. It might make him less effective or more tentative or something like that, but it's not going to – I can't imagine that would keep him out of the game if he's cleared.
Well, Les, Merry Christmas. Happy holidays. We enjoy having you on every week. We appreciate your time. And I hope you have a great holiday week.
You guys as well. And hope
we'll
see you next week and we can talk about the new year.
Woohoo!
Yes.
All right. Thank you, Les.
Bye, Les.
Good night, guys.
All right, that was Les Bowen on the Birds, his weekly spot.
The Birds.
A lot of good stuff there from Les. PY, just final thoughts on this Commanders game?
Throw it in the trash. I don't want to think about it anymore. I had my boss at work is a Giants fan, and there's a bunch of Giants gear because the guy who owned my dealership used to play for the Giants. So I had to hear it all day long. Just watch a game, PY. What's going on, PY? Birds suck, PY. So it was annoying and frustrating, and I'd like to not think about this game anymore.
It was an interesting loss in the sense that I was disappointed that they lost.
But
I'm not mad. I'm not mad that they lost. I'm not concerned long term about anything concerning this football, other than that Jalen misses.
It's justified because your starting quarterback was out 99% of the game. Your defense had 5 turnovers, which is awesome. And one of the major factors was A, injuries, and B, this was one of the most unfairly officiated games I've seen in a while. Like, because the penalty disparities were just all over the place, and what was called for one team was not called for the other. The Jaden Daniels hit that they call the 15-yard rushing the passer.
Big Milt
was insane. Meanwhile, Jalen Hurts and Kenny Pickett get drilled. And if you want to say Jalen's giving himself up head first, and that's why they don't call it, okay, fine, whatever. But Pickett sliding, knee first, already on the ground, already done, and then gets hit. It doesn't matter if it touches his head or not. You hit that quarterback in any other way, shape, or form, that's a 15-yarder.
I mean, PY, I hate to say, like, that's the way it is, but that's the way it is. If they're going to use Jalen Hurts so much on design runs and do this tush-push stuff, he's not going to get those calls like other quarterbacks.
But that's fine. If that's the case, and you're going to tell me, well, okay, he slid head first, and that's why he's not getting that call, okay, that's fine. I don't like it, but I can understand the thought process. There's no thought process to Kenny Pickett sliding knee first, giving himself up, and then getting drilled after he does it.
Do you mean Jalen Hurts? You keep saying Kenny Pickett.
Because
Jalen Hurts, right?
No, I don't mean Jalen Hurts, because there are two separate plays. There's Jalen Hurts at the beginning of the game, and then towards the end of the game, Kenny Pickett slides on like 30 and 15 or something, and then they drill him, and there's no penalty.
But we digress. Well, it's time to start a new winning streak against the Dallas Cowboys next week. I still can't. I can't believe they got 5 turnovers and lost the football game.
When was the last time we swept the Cowboys?
It's been a while. I'm pretty sure they've swept us way more recently than we've swept them. Probably by a lot. But, I mean, it's just unfathomable that not only do you lose the football game causing 5 turnovers, you let up 36 points. It's an astronomical amount of points. Let's see. Last time Eagles swept Cowboys. I bet you Andy Reid was the coach.
Possibly. Let's see. Survey says...
I'm bored. Maybe someone in the chat can help us out. I can't remember a time offhand. I bet you Andy Reid was the coach.
It's probably been a while.
Eagles record last. I should have looked it up before the show, but I didn't. So I'm not for it. All right, PY, last thing before we get out of here. Big picture, NFL. Thoughts, comments? I think Atlanta just became really interesting.
Now, I mean, like, what do you
really? I
like,
didn't say good. I said interesting.
I don't even think it's interesting. Like,
how is it not interesting?
It could be fun to see what Penix is, but it's like I'm not really interested.
At the same thing,
really? Not really. It doesn't intrigue me. Though, like if there was a quarterback behind him that there was a lot of like hoopla for, I'd be like, oh my god, okay, he's getting his shot. I'm kind of interested. I'm intrigued. I'm curious.
He was like the 8th pick in the draft.
I know, but like he still doesn't intrigue me. Like it's just like, okay, you needed a quarterback, you picked him.
But they really didn't need a quarterback because they paid Kirk Cousins a bunch of money. Now they look like a bunch of idiots because they're going to cut.
Well, they are. They are a bunch of idiots. That's facts.
But like, okay, so you're not intrigued by that. I am intrigued by the Atlanta Falcons because the Tampa Bay Buccaneers really shot themselves in the foot last night.
Yes, they did.
By losing to the Dallas Cowboys, albeit on the road, and Dallas has been playing better, especially on defense, but now Atlanta is extremely in the driver's seat in the NFC South because they've beaten Tampa Bay already twice. They have no head-to-head matchups left. And for Atlanta to make that change when they did, first off, they were very smart and calculated to make that change against the New York Giants ahead of their biggest game of the football season next Sunday night against the Commanders. So now he's got a game under his belt, and it was an easy win because the Giants are just absolute trash. So now you're playing for a potential wild card or division title against the Commanders on Sunday Night Football this week, and your quarterback isn't making his first start. And for them to make that change off a guy who they paid all that money to, and it's going to cost them a lot of dead cap, that means management knew there was a problem, the coaches knew there was a problem, and most importantly, the Atlanta Falcons players in that locker room knew that Michael Penix gives you a better shot to do something long-term than Kirk Cousins, even though he's a rookie. So that's my 2 cents on big picture NFL.
Kirk Cousins, man. Stealing with the best of them.
I respect that.
You gotta tip your cap to Kirk at some point. You turned a fourth round pick who was never expected to really do much to stealing like all the money he's had. Sam Bradford and Nick Foles would clap for you, sir.
David Roska's in the house from LA. Rams will win this Sunday against the Pars to be NFC West Division champions.
Yeah.
I agree with that statement, Roska. I think the Rams are clearly the best team out there. And I think that they will be in the playoffs as a division champion. So do you watch other games besides the Eagles?
I do. I watched all the games.
So of all the games yesterday, nothing caught your eye.
I was out like 99% of the day yesterday.
Okay, I had some stuff to do as well.
I was Christmas shopping most of the day yesterday.
Okay. So you got nothing.
I got nothing.
All right. As I said at the top of the show, we wish everyone out there a very happy and a very safe holiday season. From everyone here at A2D Radio, Rob Brinkman, Peter Young, Chuck Schmatteram, Tom Arnone. Who else comes on the show sometimes?
Pete Evans.
Pete Evans, thank you. Les Bowen. We do it for you. We're for the fan, by the fan, and Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays. Until next week, go Birds.
Go Birds.
Peace out.
Peace.